Jom de jambe yon la shazo lo kange lo de nye den nye dra nam da rap sara ve chinye dangun chi jin zi ni je tu gra le won zen konda se be zura ma re men du ne je ze ve ro so e kon la e pu je tar yin la e je je yong den song Chödrak chero nyamo nyeno leje chagdo njoze shen maru mensre dungra nyugu chinye jenze raje nom dene daj sajö tarsen yenden lezo yase tugu chödrak chodon chönye jende dale mense jambe yongla Zedine cheje chenra vesre che dale demo men parap sarane kadan den je jonglo to pa ye lo je po be no wa zal do so nam da zu rim serje sa ye den ze ba mer ling ge ben ze seram ye den no ye shu gun sa Tunchon roya lama shage yo jagan shana do je jen reze sayin himbo driba nam brasere nam gen himbo shamba kundo zon nyeve se jen je la ngwe sha dagi tsarbe kundo driba la tuzum sanje kunje tene ma Duzum sanje kunje chena mara yunze shaji jindun rapgrama yadun doname senje labdo so tsarabgundu sije tanyele tamge samme shabi yung zongshi chanchum yinpe lamgen karma ba mise debe jewe tsuge tu Rikam saga menru dambe su remyin lamje lobro chem ajong deshin kujin rebu terze pe yongzen lama ju paraje lan du laso tene samba shongjup chodo tu je ne dambe chu senro nang.
So prior to you listening to the teachings that will be given. Prior to that, you should generate the body-mind, and with that as your mindset, listen attentively to the teachings.
Tenche number chu singin changman shue chela ta pana delegasan Tuse Korang chi namshi delin juzo champu che de du Vena le kapka chat nam choye deve sondu kapka le chungmo yin deve sondu che du Kasakani ne chi chamba rabu ma deva jire de do Tene tigel kiki ge yang dose sodna tindamung pure de do Tin de Chusuji de Shekerin Chasanda Chodan She to the Mitu Train Ten Minto, come to the Zundushan Mashubi. Then the Matupsan lived some jaggy.
Khenpo begins by giving you the following information, namely, now as the season changes, the weather changes a lot. For a few days it's rather cool, and for another few days rather warm. Therefore, Khenpo Rinpoche has a bit of a flu, and myself, I have a tooth problem, which is rather painful. Therefore, Khenpo Rinpoche wants to tell you the following, namely that perhaps we won't be able to do the entire 1.5 hour session. When not feeling well today, whether it's after half an hour or an hour, or maybe we can do the entire session, let's see. it may be though that we finish before the timing of the entire session is up.
나서 되네 다 가장 그전에 쉬용투 다 군습 내 동보 반남지 군습 종주 샘 생긴다 가리 임바당 델라 로 용외 추 예답도 로 용외 추 된진 주의권에 된 셈바리.
So previously in terms of the previous 21 practices, what has been set forth is the relative perspective of the body mind in the context of beginner practitioners, advice to them in terms of how they can generate relative bodhicitta in a proper manner, and how they, in post-meditation, engage in various practices with the aim to benefit others, so-called mind training, which actually also includes working with making for a change as to one's own mindset in the context of doing so for the sake of becoming able to benefit others.
대인도 대가송 선받던 졸라도 시간에 시대에 지난 부이나 군접 종집 샘 생켄테 당봉 딱 간대지래 슈비나 로한 남카다냐 베셈진 탐제게 펜댕에 루구이 데 드베체도 산제지 컴포 루구이 삼벤 덤바드 고구이.
So if we look back a bit at the relative perspective of the body mind, what is it? Well, in general, again in the context of beginner practitioners, it concerns the resolve to attain Buddha, the enlightened state, in order to be able to truly benefit all sentient beings in number as vast as the sky.
다때는 의지 갑라 딘 덤바티게 시심베테네 감이 온테 동보
다디 냠레니 슈차티 로자로아
야
델로칸가 möpe고네 조파로아
야야 바데 니 딜야 따두 데신니 쉐긴도아
de möpe 데츠나라 샤고 레마리
möpate 지당 고기여랑아랑 속간간
메테스 슈기미노 타야
군접 종주심 데신나네 레
möpa라
레레
kunsup chanshuki semtang möpa sekendi dönchik sondishiki
halam
yes. So in terms of the relative perspective, it's primarily about an aspiration, the aspiration to attain Buddha, the enlightened state, in order to be able to benefit all beings.
텐데게 몇바등을 맞투비 자와 간 퉁도 세다 다긴 냠베셈트 매발된 정말.
So if one asks oneself the question, how come that this aspiration doesn't or isn't to 100%, as it were, present in my mind? How come I have not been able to develop this type of aspiration to the fullest extent Perhaps one has been able to do so a bit here and there, but it's a matter of to the fullest extent. How come I haven't been able to do that? Well, the answer is simple. It's simply because one doesn't see the welfare of others as important as one's own welfare. So one's perception of the situation of others and one's perception of one's own situation, here you find imbalances, namely that one is more concerned with one's own welfare than the welfare of others. And for as long as that's the case, the aspiration that the relative body-mind is about has not been developed to its fullest extent.
Dakim manyam besemte natene karayugudu sida. Tene ta chadunglo chasang tenrechil ten yungogudoa.
Furthermore, that mindset, that is to say the mindset where there is this imbalance in terms of how one thinks about one's own situation in relation to the situation of others, namely that one prefers to improve one's own situation before doing something for others. That, from the perspective of the body-mind, imbalanced mindset is a mindset where one finds all of the afflictive obscuring states, passion, aggression, and so on. So it's about, to one degree or another, depending upon the individual, a perturbed mindset.
Ngaranzo dagin nyam besem te la yang ne yang tu dagin nyam bal pyen kardu dagin manyam bal ne ya ba karyo yongdo si na ne telol kamju non ko nyam besem te.
So in order to in an efficient manner be able to develop relative bodhicitta, the balanced mindset in terms of the aspiration which takes as its goal Buddha, the enlightened state for the sake of others, in order to begin with, really want to develop this aspiration to the fullest extent, one needs to motivate oneself. Well, how do you do that? Well, you think about the shortcomings that you find in the context of this imbalanced worldly mindset and compare what you have there, because it's about your own mindset now, to the advantages that there are, or that are to be found in the mindset which is balanced, the mindset which has developed this kind of aspiration to the fullest extent.
Dakinyambe sem de la kam atu artene zambilindi nando nyokta yongzo tenene.
And in the end, one would find, if one analyzed all the details properly, that it's the imbalanced mindset where the preference is to see to one's own needs before the needs of others that is the cause of all problems in the entire world.
Che nyamja to dajin nyam besem de ya go da chi lem du sam sam chona ta ye to shawa le shu yong de yang khol ka nge mung che.
Dashin Nyampa, the Jänner yang.
Jänner yang, tene dahin ma nyamba mungu chaung kuri jing da che.
Now, in terms of contemplative meditation, the formal meditation where you contemplate the relative body-mind in terms of its aspiration to the fullest extent of that aspiration. You may find that you've made some progress in terms of your thought processes and the like. However, in post-meditation, when you find yourself in situations where you try to do something for others, there you find that there will be adverse circumstances and difficulties that you will have to face in order to be able to benefit those you have set out to benefit. And there, because you are a beginner practitioner, you may fall back, as it were, into mind's old habits, being overwhelmed by the difficulties involved in trying to help others. Individuals who may even turn against you in spite of that you yourself never did any harm. There may be overwhelming situations like that, overwhelming because one is a beginner practitioner. And so in terms of post-meditation, even though one might, in terms of the contemplative part of generating relative bodhicitta, one might have developed a bit. That might be turned upside down in certain situations, as it were, in post-meditation, because of difficult circumstances.
Sambata ngarang so yue bache. Tene di yue de pango da bache ri chona tene che komo chu nye hyu te la ya nanda me de so.
So the beginner practitioner does mind training, which here involves contemplative meditation, as well as actions enacted in post-meditation, as it were, with the aim of benefiting others one way or the other in the context of the balanced mindset of true relative bodhicitta, where the aspiration to benefit others has been developed to its fullest extent, and therefore those who have come very far in terms of this practice or this perspective of mind training as to relative bodhicitta will, as has been explained earlier, be able to exchange their good circumstances for the suffering of others and truly benefit others. Now, in terms of regular practitioners, perhaps, as opposed to advanced practitioners here, as was said, a beginner practitioner may make some development in terms of contemplative meditation, but encounter difficulties in post-meditation in terms of achieving the goal of benefiting others because of difficult circumstances. Now, what the beginner practitioner does is he simply persists in both contemplative meditation and trying to benefit others in post-meditation in various ways according to the level of his capacity. And persisting in doing this or persevering in this will in the end give result. For example, a person who has developed to some extent here, even though still a beginner, would, when encountering a homeless person on the street who asks him for money, without thinking, this person would be able to take out 10 or 20 euros out of his purse and give this person. Without there being a sense of, oh, that's too much, or I should just give some small change or whatever, which people usually do. When they give a little, and that then bears witness to that the person in question still wants to keep most of his money for himself, which is a mindset to a great extent still tainted by primarily selfish motives. Now, a person who has somewhat developed here and who therefore, without there being a sense of regret, oh, I shouldn't have given him that much type of thought afterwards, this practitioner, this beginner practitioner is able to just give it, and there are no second thoughts. There is no regret. He is happy he was able to help this person with the 10 or 20 euros. And, a person like that has taken a few steps. He has, on this path, he has advanced a bit.
Jänner, Tenphel la lobro toja michige ku lakben nang back the tosona. Te yang xie dong do sen na yi ga yong ge che. Ti gab la kan de che go ge me.
However, that person would probably, if 15 minutes later perhaps, someone grabs his bag and runs off with it, meaning he has lost all the money that he had in the purse, and perhaps he had a couple of 100 euros. And at that point, this person will get angry, upset, and sort of freak out about his handbag or his bag with the money in it having been stolen, perhaps his telephone and other things in it. So it's not as if a person at the level of the ability to, without any sense of greed, the person being able to give 10, 20 euros has, it's not a matter of a practitioner who has sort of developed the aspiration of relative bodhicitta to its fullest extent. There will be circumstances where he falls back into a worldly mindset with anger, upset, and the like.
That the she don't take one the short song in na. Then the dajin yamba gamba ni je shamba singing, then so can get in the last get it.
And in that situation, what has happened, mindset-wise, is that the practitioner's mindset has given in to anger. And anger at the thief who stole his bag, that anger has taken over his mindset simply. And the previous good aspirations are, for that period of time, been thrown out of the window, as it were, figuratively speaking. There is nothing left of that good aspiration. Now, in the previous section, oh dear, I have to count. Just a second. verses or practices 14 through 21 are about advice in terms of counteracting this kind of pitfall, as it were, where anger takes over and your good aspirations are gone.
Kesa, nichu damngan dunzo, namsha juntu ngarangi yangne yangda jintum yulam lanjartu vachilang.
Now, these 10 practices, verse 14 through 21, as a beginner practitioner, one should try to keep them in one's mind, think about them often, and retain memory of them, recollect them frequently to the extent where they affect your personal behavior, to the effect where you're able to hold back your anger and the anger not taking over your mindset.
Nga chungdu jonjuk de la gawu jonjuk chamung bu chi tan ngara ten nge tar rupe thaba chi ten nganjen jonjuk takwa ta de che de kong de se ge kong ba de ge thungro la mc ji yor mc dora se de
Naso
ten ko jonjuk zepele ut ma chor de
MC Dodra
Mare de rupe
Rupa de
Jor de mc dora de la les koza tene kan chegi yose zepe leu jor de gyo zes te korta des ten yan ros de ko ta tan pesha ngoyin de yoro korchi ke to ba ji tam ni trama thon jus tsikpa sa chi ni yarla mc dora trupa jams tsikpa maza zepa segitos tene matan zo turo che tende che sons te sanna jitan di dhamma de shibu je pen sons danda ko ngone chepa namda chi chen de do
Khenpo Rinpoche himself, as a young man, studied a text authored by an Indian Buddhist master by the name Shantideva, engaging in the deeds of a Bodhisattva, the Bodhicharya Avatara. Now, many times with different teachers, he was very fond of this text, Khenpo Rinpoche. Now, of course, he wasn't the only student. There were others, and one fellow student was a monk from Bhutan who lived in the village attached to the Rumtek monastery. And he was a neighbor with the village physician, a physician of Tibetan medicine by the name Amchi Dodra. And the Bhutanese monk was sitting outside reciting the text. That's part of the various aspects of acquiring knowledge of a text in terms of Tibetan Buddhism. One recites the text frequently in order to remind oneself of the text itself, as well as the explanations of the text given by the teacher. And he was doing that on a daily basis, presumably, and one day, as he was reciting the text which sets forth the practice of patience, his neighbor, M.G. Chödrak, came out and asked him, "What are you reciting?" And so the monk explained and also said, I'm now in the middle of the recitation of the chapter on patience and its virtues. Excuse me. Then Chödrak just left. A couple of minutes later on, though, he went back and he, that is to say, the Bhutanese monk who was reciting didn't notice to begin with because he was preoccupied with reciting the text. And suddenly something hit his head. Now, Chödrak had gone back to his house, fetched a stick, and simply hit him over his head, and so badly that the skin broke open and he was bleeding. And the Bhutanese monk got furious and started shouting at him. And the physician's answer was, well, where is your patient now? And the Bhutanese monk realized he had just gotten into a rage, which was inappropriate in terms of the teachings he had been reciting. And so he calmed down, and the physician helped him to clean his wound and take care of all of that, and they were friends again. So, point made is, the advice given in terms of these practices that have been explained and will be explained are to be assimilated to the point where the behavior that are associated with these practices becomes one's own behavior in all situations, not just in situations where it's easy to smile and look good, but in situations such as the one just described as well. So today we will start the next section, which concerns the absolute perspective of the body mind. Ladu.
Shologani Shani de Chödrak no one did that rank sim semi dene tube tadum tal deni hene zonzin senmanam yilamisi yasela yin song.
So this section starts with practice number 22, and it reads as follows. Apparent phenomena, all of them, are fabrications of the mind. The innate nature of mind is separate from mind's fabrications. Having seen this, to be uninvolved with dualistic perception is the practice of a bodhisattva.
That in the Chödrak no did that rank sim song. No way open the door. Sending more than temporary song.
Sugi Sungwamari Sanjig.
Sanjig Sungwamari. Sanjig Kar Sungwarasana. Shiru Jingo Pondezo Kanga Rangi number Tokba Trubande Zoshakdu Sungwari. Mato Pela Yurgetendo Mendu Sungwi.
So apparent phenomena, all of them, are fabrications of the mind. These, to begin with, the Buddha stated. So we can see then that the Buddha never said that the things we know, the things we perceive, the things and the people we are in contact with, the Buddha never said that these are real. He said that all of them are fabrications of the mind. He pointed to that our perceptions of things are things, people, animals, whatever, are object-oriented. Our perceptions see things as real, as having a life of their own. The Buddha pointed out that this isn't the case. All of those things, or rather the way they look to the worldly mindset, that or the outlook as to them of the worldly mindset is inaccurate. The way these things are perceived by the worldly mindset is